Folks, welcome back. Today we have a state of the Pokemon market video, October 2025. We have officially made it to Q4. So I'm going to give you my kind of analysis of what I see happening around the hobby right now as we head into the end of the year and the holidays. Let you know what I see going up, what I see going down, and my overall takes. So first and foremost, to give the shock factor to start the video, things are dropping. Things are actually starting to stabilize, and we are seeing price corrections pretty much across the modern market right now. No joke. So, pretty much all of the Sword and Shield era hot alt art boxes that had massive run-ups this year, we are starting to see a bit of a cooling off and actually some stagnation and even price drops on all the sets like Chilling Reign, Evolving Skies, Fusion Strike, Brilliant Stars, Astral Radiance, Lost Origin, Silver Tempest. It does seem like those booster boxes are starting to stagnate and even see some price drops. So it does seem we finally kind of reached that capitulation point where people are now, looking other places, because other places in the hobby are still hot. So it does look like they've reached price points where people have kind of got their positions for the time being. Other people are taking profits. So we're starting to have kind of that competition at the price points they're at. And so it does seem like there's a cooling off period coming. Could be a time to pick things up if they do drop, or it could just be kind of a stalling period until we have another run up more towards the holidays, which is normally how it works. Moving into Scarlet Violet era, I would say, again, a little bit of a slowdown. It does seem like some of the boxes have kind of reached the value that a lot of people see fit. And you're no longer seeing the intense buying pressure. You're not seeing intense selling pressure either. It's not like people are kind of having a race to the bottom. No one seems to be dumping in mass. It just kind of seems like the market has reached price points on a lot of these products where people kind of agree on. There's kind of as many buyers and sellers, and they're kind of stagnating around these prices. Sets like Scarlet Violet base sets, Stellar Crown, Journey Together, even like Temporal Forces. Temporal Forces are rising a bit still, but a lot of those are kind of stalling out in the mid 200, 250 to 275 range. Surging Sparks is actually a little bit under $300. It had that big run from 250 to over 300. Now it's, kind of giving some back like normally does after a big run. It seems like it's kind of stalling out in that 280 to 290 range. Paldea Evolved could not quite hit that $500 range. It does look like it's stalling out in the 470s, the 480s. Obviously Obsidian and Twilight Masquerade are still very healthy in the 300s. Depending on what day you look, could be in the, 310s, 320s up to 340s, 350s. And so they're kind of trading in that range. Paradox Rift did not hold the 300s after the big run up. It did dip back under. It's now selling in the high 200s. Again, it did run up from like the 250 range. And so it kind of makes sense for it to kind of stabilize somewhere in the 280 range. Makes sense to me. That's where Paradox Rift is. What am I missing? Destined Rivals, it's still outrageous. It honestly is stabilizing too. It's no longer, having the intense run up. It's no longer dropping after the big drop from the run up. It does look like it's stabilized in kind of the low to mid 400s. I would say like the 425 to 450 range is kind of where you're finding Destined Rivals. And that kind of brings us to Mega Evolutions, which it does seem like it found its range above $300. I do believe there will be a correction coming when the next wave of booster boxes come. Do I personally believe it's going to be a massive correction? I don't. Sorry for everyone looking to pick up a bunch. I could see them dipping under $300, but I don't see them dipping under $250. And so like in my mind, I think it's probably going to be somewhere in the upper 200s to the low 300s when Mega Evolutions drops. Because one thing is everyone kind of knows Pokemon's policy lately on printing booster boxes is not the greatest. So there's going to be a lot of people wanting to get a position in these when the next wave comes, which is going to wipe that next wave out pretty quickly. Now, there will be a lot of packs that do come to market that do drop the price, but I don't think it's probably going to be very long-lived, especially running into the holidays. In my opinion, I think Mega Evolutions is going to stay extremely strong. The pull rates on the gold cards are very difficult, which is going to keep those having high value. A lot of the SIRs are very sought after. And the pull rates are great on the box, which is going to keep packs being opened more and more because people can pull the cards they actually want. And so I think Mega Evolutions is going to stay strong. As far as specialty sets, 151, in my opinion, is not stopping. Maybe they dump more product from now until next spring when it goes out of print. Maybe they don't. There's nothing they're going to do at this point. It's from stopping 151. It's a behemoth. It's going to go to the moon. It's only a question of when it gets there. Paldean Fates. I know there is news of a new collection box coming. Unfortunately, I don't mean to bear bad news again. In my opinion, as always, I don't think it's going to do much. I don't think there's enough packs in these collection boxes to really cool off Paldean Fates enough. Now, it could stagnate it. It could send it down a little bit, 5-10% on packs and cards and things like that. Could be your last opportunity to pick them up at a discount before that, again, does go out of print next spring, and everything will continue to rise from there, in my opinion, because after things go out of print, everyone feels so much more comfortable investing money and putting cards away and putting, products away. And so, if it does dip at all with these collection boxes, that is your opportunity. Take it. Prismatic Evolutions, you guys already know my thoughts. I think it's one of the single greatest investments of this era, especially at the current price points it's still at. Somehow loose packs are still selling under $10 on the open market, which in my opinion is crazy. The ETBs are starting to rise. The bundles are starting to rise. Everything's starting to rise, right? PC ETBs, SPCs, all of it. To this day, it's still the most expensive modern PSA 10 slab in the last 2 eras, if I'm not mistaken. It's still selling more than the Moonbryon. You have to go back to Sun and Moon until you finally find a slab that's actually more valuable than the Umbreon EX. Not to mention all the other Eeveeutions inside, not to mention all the other cards. You have the Shinji Kanda Roaring Moon. You have the gold cards. You have the Master Balls, which could be plays later on. I just think, and then obviously the Demigod and God packs have some of the highest value packs we've ever seen in modern times. In my opinion, like I said, I'm going to stand by this. I think so many people are missing out on Prismatic Evolutions. I still think Prismatic Evolutions is a pickup even at today's prices, even though it's still in print. You guys know how I feel about that. Shrouded Fable, kind of cooled off after that brief little run when people saw the scarcity. It's not dropping though. I mean, the ETBs are staying up at the highs. The packs are staying up at the highs. It's still very scarce. You're starting to have some of the cards get more valuable. I know the Persian has been moving up. I think it's almost $300 card. The Cassiopeia, starting to get a little love. The Houndoom, all those things. I think Shrouded Fable is a sleeper play. I don't think it's a play where you're going to make, millions of dollars. But I do feel like a lot of these things in Shrouded Fable and the set itself is a little undervalued. I think there's some, play to make there. I'm not saying it's like something you have to do, but it's there if you want it. And Black and White. Here's my problem with Black and White. Definitely, if you want to move into Black and White, the ETBs are still pretty cheap. But when you start looking at the single pack price, it's like the same price as Prismatic Evolutions. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to buy a pack, I'm going to buy Prismatic. I'm not going to buy Black and White. So if I'm going to buy like 500 packs to put away, I'm going Prismatic over Black and White. Like every day of the week. It's older, it's much better, et cetera, et cetera. The ETBs, though, they're much lower on Black and White. I think they're still in the 80s. Look, there's definitely an argument to pick those up. Could they get reprinted, head back to MSRP? Honestly, here, MSRP gang, listen up. If there is a set that I feel most confident in the whole Scarlet Violet era that could actually hit MSRP, it could be Black and White. If Black and White gets a major reprint, that is one of the sets I actually could see getting back to $60, $65 in ETB. Will that happen? No one knows, but it's staying low enough. And it's surrounded by so many popular sets, Destined Rivals, obviously, Mega Evolutions, now Fantasmal Flames. People are still opening Prismatic. I think there's so many popular sets around it that's getting overshadowed. I think it's a pretty decent set in and of itself. It's just around so many other sets that people say, well, if I'm going to spend the money, I'm going to buy a Destined Rivals pack. I'm going to buy a Mega Evolutions pack. I'm going to buy Prismatic. And I think that's why it's getting overshadowed and staying low. So that could be opportunities to understand. Still a brand new set, could get reprinted, all that stuff. So that's my take on all that. Fantasmal Flames. I think Mega Evolutions is going to outshine in Fantasmal Flames. Unless we are getting more cards than what we see in Inferno X, and they do slip like some kind of crazy Gengar in there or a Gengar illustration or other cards, just judging from Inferno X, it's just a Charizard set. Again, They think Charizard can carry the entire set. There's some other, kind of cool Pokemon, cool cards, but look, that doesn't mean it's not going to be great. Obsidian Flames, right? Flash Fire, even Burning Shadows is doing all right. The only Charizard set that's not doing the greatest is Darkness Ablaze, but that Charizard was just a full art VMAX. They put the main Charizards in Shining Fates, Champion's Path, Brilliant Stars, right? And so And the artwork's the S tier. It's the best. I mean, in my opinion, it's the best Charizard ever created. I don't care. All the vintage bros, mid-era bros, all the modern bros. I'm saying across every era ever printed to this day, I think that is the best Charizard artwork. And it probably is enough to carry the set. Now, is it enough to outshine Mega Evolutions? Maybe. Maybe it's a small set and enough people pull the Charizard and they get sick of it. And they're like, well, you know, that chase is over. Maybe I want to go back to try and pull those gold cards and still getting great hit rates. I don't know. All I know is on this next drop of Mega, I would definitely be picking up some of those if it gets to a good price. I wouldn't be putting all my eggs in one basket on Fantasmal Flames thinking it's going to be just the God tier set of God tier sets. It'll probably be great. It'll probably do well. I just don't know how well because, again, it doesn't look deep enough for me. That's just me. I didn't cover the specialty sets in Sword and Shield. Crown Zenith, still strong. Obviously, the sealed product, still strong. When we look at Celebration, still really strong. Probably going to continue to be strong running into the next anniversary set next spring or beginning of the year whenever they're going to throw it out. Pokemon Go. It's Pokemon Go. I know the Mewtwo's doing some cool stuff in there, but look, Pokemon Go is probably going to be an underperformer. Shining Fates, I know it's been running up, probably still going to be an underperformer. It's all about that Charizard, and the Charizard's not honestly the coolest Charizard in the era, in my opinion. And then you got Champion's Path, which those Charizards are probably cooler than that one because at least it's a rainbow. It's a Charizard V, the black one with a secret rare. I mean, at least those, I still think they're worse than Brilliant in my opinion. I really like the Brilliant Charizard. A lot of people don't. I think Champion's Path definitely has the two best ones. So, I mean, Champion's Path may continue to do a little something, but that's kind of how I see that. Sun and Moon and XY, I'm not going to cover them too much. They're all astronomical at this point. They're definitely for kind of like the top tier collectors, top tier investors. If you can afford them, I believe almost every box at this point is over $1,000 with the exception of a few, Crimson Invasion, some others. And all the cards are astronomical too, especially PSA 10, you're talking top hits are, if not high hundreds, thousands and thousands of dollars. And so it's hard to, really recommend making plays on those. They're more of like becoming stores of value and less about like intense growth. Doesn't mean they can't go through intense growth, but it just seems like you have better opportunity moving into cheaper items and trying to get better exponential returns in a shorter amount of time because there's a larger customer base for cheaper items than there are expensive items. Now, it could be safer, getting more expensive, scarce items. But again, if you're looking for like more intense growth, I always kind of look for the newer stuff. So that's my take on those. The slab market. The slab market's extremely strong. I mean, I looked at some of these slabs today. Some of these cards, especially when you go back to Sword and Shield alt arts and trainer galleries, some of these have like 20 or less copies on the entire market in a PSA 10. Some of these cards have I'm not talking like for the whole year, for the last like few months have risen like another 80 to 100%. It's that intense. Scarlet Violet slabs, same way, getting very, very scarce. Some are under, some are actually under 10 available on the market. Some are under 20. Most are under 100. Scarlet Violet slabs, PSA 10s at least, are very scarce. Everyone knows Scarlet Violet hit rates are gem rates are much harder than Sword and Shield, meaning it's way harder to get PSA 10s in Scarlet Violet than it is Sword and Shield, which, may make them more desirable. I know a lot of people say they like the Sword and Shield alt arts, pull rates, and art better, but when it comes to Scarlet Violet, these illustration rares, they are going to get increasingly harder to find as time goes on. Because as I've talked about before, as time goes on, the gem rate actually goes down. The reason that is as, the margins get much greater and greater for the raw, the PSA 10, people get more desperate and they will continue to try to send in more cards that they believe can get a 10, even though they're like, I probably won't, but might as well take the shot because maybe the grader will give it to me, which usually ends up making the gem rate decrease further and further. So if it's 30% now, in another 3 years, it could be 25, 22%, 20% gem rate because so many 9s and 8s are coming back and so few 10s, which make it even harder and harder, or more and more margin on the PSA 10. And harder to find the PSA 10s because so many people want to get their hands on them because they realize it's so much harder to grade than they realize, so much harder to find, which is why you see all of these disappear left and right. The Drowsy from Scarlet Violet base, the Tyranitar Raichu, Magikarp from Paldea Evolved, all of which I think are going to keep rising. You go to Obsidian Flames, look at the Ninetales. You go to Paradox Rift, look at the Groudon. You go to Twilight Masquerade, look at the Eevee. Stellar Crown, you look at the Squirtle, Bulbasaur. Surging Sparks, Cerulege, Latias, they're not quite as top tier. And then obviously Destin, all the other sets are going to have the same thing happening. Even 151 illustrations are really starting to rise. You're seeing a lot of the starters and other ones get up in the 200-300 plus range. You look at Paladin Fates, they don't have any illustrations, unfortunately. And then even Shrouded Fable, like I said, the Hound, Doom, Persian are already moving. I think illustration rare PSA 10s are going to be very strong, especially the ones with very difficult gem rates. Not just that, the SIRs in Scarlet Violet have much more difficult gem rates than Sword and Shield. A lot of Sword and Shield alt arts and trainer galleries have 60, 70% PSA 10s come back. Okay, 60, 70 percentiles. When you look at Scarlet Violet, the average is like 30 to 40% on all of the cards, especially the special illustration rares. Meaning, yeah, there may be 50,000 cards graded. You might only have 15,000 10s, which is similar to the numbers in Sword and Shield when, again, they're printing more now and there's more popularity in the hobby now. So if you have the similar numbers of 10s when there's more people in that want the cards, you know what's going to happen. Price goes up, and you're already seeing that happen. And again, I think there's certain portions of the market right now when it comes to singles and slabs that are overpriced. And I'm not talking about the crazy run-ups and all the buyouts and manipulation going on. I mean, just the organic run-ups. I think some of the slabs are starting to get a little overpriced, but I think some of the slabs, they were mispriced before, and now they're getting properly priced. I don't see 151 slabs coming back down. I think things like the Zapdos, right, the Blastoise, Venusaur, Alakazam, SIRs, those were grossly underpriced at $200-ish. That was crazy. Of course, those deserve to be $300, $400, $500 cards, in my opinion. Now, the Charizard should be running up to $1,300, $1,400. It seems a little excessive to me. I think it's probably deserved to be at least $800 to $1,000. It's obviously maybe going a little overrun right now. Maybe it corrects a little bit. Who knows? But, you know, Paladin Fates, maybe the Bubble Mew is a little overvalued. The Charizard seems relatively, you know, properly valued down in the 800s right now, which, you know, makes sense to me for how hard it is to get in a PSA 10 and how hard it is to hit in general, how expensive the set already is, so how much it costs to actually pull that card with packs. And so there are some of the things, again, that don't make sense. There's other things that honestly do make sense, especially when you look at the gem rates. And so, in my opinion, overall market take after breaking down everything, I think we are slowing down in terms of price rises for the time being. Maybe through October, maybe when we get, maybe even middle of November, once we get closer to Black Friday time and closer to the holidays, I think everything does go on another little run. I think that the slabs are going to continue to stay expensive and even maybe possibly keep rising unless we start getting large amounts back from PSA, and PSA's backlogs keep a slow drip coming back, and it's not fast enough to quench the demand. So, and again, there's so few that actually get the 10s that there's just not enough to get in the hands of people that actually want to buy them and have the money for them. And so the slab market right now actually still feels strong for the time being, unless PSA really starts dumping, the pop reports really start rising quick. I don't know. But Sword and Shield, I mean, how much are more of those going to rise? It seems like those pop reports are starting to kind of flatline too. I mean, they're still rising small amounts, but it seems like those cards are probably a little more safer because, you know, they're all out of print and they're all starting to rise again, and they're very, very scarce. And when we look at Sun and Moon and XY, the cards have only got more scarce over time, not less scarce on the market. And so there's my take on that. And, you know, Fantasmal Flames, again, I think it'll be fine. Great over time. I wouldn't bet the house on it and go all in at like $350 a box like it is right now or on pre-release or whatever. But I mean, obviously if you can get a deal, get it. Mega Evolutions, if you can find it on the pullback. Paladin Fates, if you can find it on the pullback if that collection box does anything. And, like I said, anything that gets a restock or reprint and drops 10, 15, 20%, whatever it is, I still think is a pickup. I think people overestimate the in print, and they underestimate how long things are in print and how much things get printed in print. Remember, every single set in Scarlet Violet is technically in print. When is the last time you've seen any of the sets actually get a major reprint, right? A lot of these sets are going out of print here soon, meaning just because something is in print doesn't mean it's constantly getting printed and put on the market. They have to pick and choose what sets they do. And when the sets that don't get chosen for the reprints, they continue to run because they just get scarce and scarce day after day. And so that's kind of my philosophy. Again, it may differ from others out there, and that's fine, but I don't let the in-print things scare me as much as others do. I would rather continue to build positions every time I can, because eventually the sets do age, they get scarce, and they do reach that out of print date. And you're going to wish you had them. You're not going to worry if you paid $6, $7, $5 a pack, whatever it is. You're not going to worry if you paid, $250, $270, $300, whatever a box. You're going to be happy that you had them in the future when, again, in my opinion, they'll be $500 to $1,000 a box in this era. So there you go. Feel like I was as honest as possible. Obviously, I'm always bullish in the market. That's why I still buy and hold this stuff. But yeah, I mean, things are definitely stagnating right now. They're slowing down a bit. So understand that and use this knowledge for how you see fit. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm out.